Picture a guy. We'll call him Greg. Greg is a Homo sapiens living a very long time ago. And Greg has a problem. Greg is naked. Not in a fun way. In a the sun went down and now he understands regret kind of way. Here's the thing nobody tells you about being an early human. For most of our history, we were just out there, no pants, no jacket, no little scarf for when the wind got rude. Just skin, vibes, and the slow dawning horror of the night shift. So, at some point, one of our ancestors looked at a dead animal. They looked at their own goosebumps and made the single greatest fashion decision in history. They put the animal on. But here's the question that has driven scientists slightly insane. When exactly did this happen? And more importantly, why? Because the answer is so much weirder than they were cold. The real story involves bugs, a migration, and an ancient sewing kit, and the fact that we can date clothing using lice. Yes, lice. We will get there. So let's figure out why ancient humans stopped being naked. This is going to get strange. First, why were we naked in the first place? Because most animals do not have this problem. A bear does not need a coat. A bear is the coat. A wolf is wearing the wolf. So what happened to us? Somewhere over 1 million years ago, our ancestors did something rare. They lost their fur. Most of it, anyway. Our relatives went from shaggy and fully carpeted to weird, smooth, mostly bald primates on the African savanna, looking like they had just lost a bet. Why would evolution do this? The leading idea is sweat. As humans ran long distances under a brutal African sun, all that fur became a liability. Fur traps heat. Bare skin with millions of sweat glands is an incredible cooling system. So we traded the fur coat for the ability to run down an antelope until it overheated and gave up. Honestly, iconic. Very efficient. Great for the daytime. There was one tiny, catastrophic flaw in this plan. The sun goes down. Here's the cruel joke of evolution. We optimized our entire body for staying cool. We became the planet's best long-distance overheating machine. And then every single night, the temperature dropped. Our amazing cooling system became an amazing freezing system. For a long time, this was survivable. Our ancestors lived in warm parts of Africa, where nights were chilly but not deadly. You could shiver through it, you could huddle, you could discover fire, which we did. Fire is great. 10 out of 10. But fire has a downside. It stays in one place. And early humans started doing the thing we're most famous for. We started leaving. We started spreading out of Africa, walking north into Europe, into Asia, walking directly into the one thing a naked sweat monkey dreads. Winter. Real winter. Not chilly evening. Winter. Your skin is now a popsicle, and the popsicle has opinions winter. Ice Age winter, where Europe was basically a freezer with mammoths. So a species designed to stay cool marched into the coldest places. This should have ended us. A naked human in an ice age has the survival odds of an ice cube in a sauna. And yet, we didn't just survive. We thrived. We moved into the freezer and we redecorated. So somewhere along the way, somebody figured out the warmth situation. Somebody invented clothes. And this is where it gets genuinely bizarre. The best evidence doesn't come from a museum or a cave painting. It comes from a parasite riding along in our underwear for 100,000 years. Meet the body louse, a tiny, blood-sucking, disgusting insect. And it is about to be the hero of this story. Here's the key fact. There are two main kinds of lice on humans. The head louse lives in your hair, since back when we were furry. And then there's the body louse, a different creature. And the body louse does not live on your body. The body louse lives in your clothing. That is its entire habitat. It crawls onto your skin to feed, then scurries back into the fabric. The body louse evolved specifically to live in clothes, which means the body louse couldn't exist before clothes existed. You cannot have a clothing-dwelling parasite with no clothes. That's like having a houseplant before houses. So scientists had a genius idea. Figure out when the body louse split off from the head louse. And we can figure out when humans started wearing clothes. The moment we invented clothing, we created a brand new ecosystem. A warm, cozy fabric world. And some lice moved in and never left. So researchers studied louse DNA. They measured how far the body louse had drifted from the head louse and used that to estimate when the two split apart. The answer was somewhere around 170,000 years ago, with some estimates closer to 100,000. So humans have worn clothes for at least 100,000 years. Long before we left Africa, long before farming, long before writing, cities, or anyone inventing an outfit. We were dressed. Let that sink in. We figured out human fashion by asking the bugs in our pants. Science is amazing and also deeply gross. So we know roughly when. Now let's talk about how. Because the first clothes were not exactly haute couture. The earliest clothing was almost certainly just animal hides. You kill an animal, which we were already doing for food, and instead of throwing away the skin, you wrap yourself in it. Boom. Coat. The simplest possible technology. A dead bear is basically a blanket that used to have goals. But raw animal skin has problems. Wear it, and within days it rots and gets stiff as a board. And it smells like a crime. So early humans had to learn how to process hides, scraping off fat and flesh, drying them, softening them, treating them with animal brains and smoke to make leather. And we know this because we found ancient stone hide scraping tools, worn down exactly the way they'd be from cleaning skins. So for ages, the human wardrobe was dead animal, but wearable. You drape it, wrap it, tie it with sinew or strips of leather. Simple, functional. A little gory, but it worked, and it kept us alive through the cold. But there was still a limit. A draped hide is clumsy. It flaps. It lets the wind in. To survive an ice age, you don't want a loose cape. You want fitted, sealed, layered gear, clothes that actually hug your body and trap the heat. For that, you need one of history's most underrated inventions. You need the needle. Here's something that messes with how you picture your ancestors. The eyed needle with a little hole for thread is advanced technology. It's precision engineering at a tiny scale, carved from bone or ivory, with a hole drilled so fine that stone tools barely manage it. And we found them. Bone needles from Europe and Asia, around 40,000 years old, and some needle-like tools that may be even older. These little needles meant humans could do something revolutionary. They could sew. Sewing changed everything. You could cut leather and fur and stitch them into shaped garments. Sleeves, hoods, fitted trousers, boots stuffed with grass for insulation. Multiple layers, sealed at the seams, trapping warm air against the skin. The needle turned clothing from a dead animal into a system. And this part is easy to miss. That sewing needle wasn't just a comfort upgrade. It was survival gear. Fitted, layered clothing let humans push into the coldest regions and actually stay there. Some scientists point to tailored clothing as an advantage over Neanderthals, who seem to have relied on simpler draped hides. When the climate got brutal, the people with better jackets had an edge. So clothing wasn't a fashion statement. It was a passport. It's how a tropical, sweaty, hairless ape ended up thriving, in places where it had absolutely no business being. Now, you might think the story ends there. Humans got cold, humans made clothes. The end. But here's the twist. Warmth might not have been the only reason. Maybe not even the first. Because here's the awkward thing. Some of the earliest body decoration has nothing to do with cold. We've found shell beads, pierced and strung together to be worn. In warm climates, where you absolutely did not need a coat, we've found lumps of ochre, a reddish pigment, ground up for color, used very likely on human skin and hides. People in hot places with zero reason to bundle up decorated themselves, which suggests part of why we adorn ourselves was never about temperature. It was about meaning, about saying who you are. A particular fur might mark you as a skilled hunter. A string of beads might show your status and your group. The way you decorated yourself was a language worn on the skin, long before we had writing to say any of it out loud. So clothing was doing two completely different jobs at once. In the freezing north, it was keeping you alive. And everywhere it told everyone exactly who you were. Function and fashion, tangled together from the very beginning. The naked ape didn't just put on a coat. The naked ape invented an identity you could wear. So let's go back to Greg, our naked, shivering, deeply regretful friend from the start. Greg was standing at the beginning of something gigantic. That one decision, to pick up a hide and put it on, set off a chain reaction through hide scrapers and bone needles, through woolen cloaks, silk roads, and entire empires built on trade, all the way down to you, right now, wearing clothes, while watching a cartoon about why you're wearing them. And the wildest part? We only know this timeline because of the bugs in those first garments. The lice in Greg's new fur coat are why we can date clothing at all. Greg got dressed and picked up some passengers, and those passengers left a 100,000-year paper trail in their DNA. So next time you put on a jacket, take a second to appreciate it. You are not just staying warm. You're using a technology older than farming, older than cities, older than written history itself. You're wearing the single greatest idea a naked, sweaty ape ever had. And somewhere, long ago, Greg is wrapped in a slightly smelly bear hide. Finally warm. Finally smug. Completely unaware that he just invented the entire fashion industry. And that the only witnesses were the lice in his new coat. Worth it, Greg. Worth it.